Right, it's really quite daunting knowing that you're the last slot, or was it the dead slot, or the
no, not dead.
Piss off yeah, I'd like to start with. I get this a lot, and some of you may have already said it. What is a celebrant? So I'm a what? And firstly, thanks Tim for allowing me to. I think I'm not a virgin, but I might be.
You're not a virgin?
I'm not, yeah, because I've been here before,
yes.
but not. This is my first Bavard, so thank you for allowing me to be a Bavarder. But and I also, with my role as a celebrant, I'm not used to being able to move, so I'm quite giddy because I normally have to stand dead still, no pun, and not be able to move. So I really want to milk this, but I feel like I might turn into Michael McIntyre. Without the comedic talent, but yes, I am a celebrant, and it's quite interesting when people first come across that. And so, and I heard somebody say it earlier, and I have been in houses, I swear to you, where people, I've had a couple of old fellas recently say, "So you're one of those celibates?" and I'm like, no. It's hard enough living a life with a name like Nuala, which is spelled Nuala, typical Paddy, not spelled how they're pronounced. So I've had a lifetime, 60 years of trying to explain my name. I then go and get a bloody job where people are saying, you what? So no, I'm not a celibate, so I'll put my hand up and declare that now straight away. I'm very happy in that quarter. But I do get family saying to me, okay, 3/4. And I have been asked, am I a celebrity? And I don't mind that one, I can live with that one. Probably in my own mind I am. And only recently, oh, you're a celebrator. I think that's quite a good one. And I've had things like, oh, you a lady non-vicar. And because people do go into a little bit of a panic that they feel, and they whisper. I'm in a house, I'm in their house, nobody can hear us, and they start whispering, "You're one of those lady non-vicars." Or a pretend priest. I only had that a little while ago. I'm not a registrar, I'm not employed by the local authority, I'm not licensed to perform certain aspects of celebrant work, which I'll come back to. So, yes, I'm a celebrant, I'm an independent celebrant. How many of you have experienced being self-employed? Yeah, so you know what it's like. So I'm an independent, self-employed celebrant and work very hard to maintain my workload. I'm also a member of what's known as the Fellowship of Professional Celebrants, which is a membership body which has been in existence for some time. And I, again, will come back to that. And I am truly honoured. So people often ask me, well, why did you become a celebrant? It wasn't a pathway that I had imagined when I was growing up. And it did happen by fate, really. And I have a strong belief in fate. It's served me very well the last few years. And I was actually working as a director in charity. I've mainly worked in charity sector and some public sector. And many of you, I'm sure, have experienced the death of a loved one. And if we use parents as an example, I experienced the death of my dad, and it was in 2010. And obviously, many of us will know, it's devastating, the loss of anyone. And it was hard to take, and it hit the family very hard, because my dad was a much-loved man. I don't just say that because he was my dad. But that was 2010, and my mother's grief meant that she made some poor judgments at the time, which we as a family had to cope with. And one of them was, we better have a minister. Now, anything I say, please know with my hand on my heart, I am never disrespectful or disregard the importance and the value that the church plays in so many people's lives. I have family members that have been in the church, I have good friends that are in the church, so it's never about me disregarding that. But my mum had this minister, and the service was appalling. English was his second language, which is not a criticism, but his English wasn't very good. He got my dad's name wrong throughout the service. It broke our hearts. We had 200 people there. And we could never do that again. So one of the things I always say to families when I meet with them, I promise you, you will remember the service for all the right reasons, because I can't for my dad. So we'd gone through this back in 2010, and then my mum, so unexpectedly, 18 months later, died of bowel cancer, which we had no idea that she had, and nor did she. And that was the first time, sitting in funeral directors, we heard this word, celebrant. And we thought, well, yeah, that sounds a bit more realistic for us. So this lovely lady came to meet with my sister and brother and I, and she officiated at my mother's funeral. And I did the tribute for my mum. And I'll be honest, it was crap performance. I blubbed all the way through it, but I did get all my little gems out. But because I was heartbroken, it was still so soon for us, having lost our dad. But everyone said afterwards, Nuala, you've got to do this. It's you. Which I couldn't quite understand at the time, because why would I want to have a living dealing with such sadness? And my charity that I was involved in at the time, my chief exec and I were really struggling to keep things moving. And I won't bore you with, I'm sure some of you have got the joys of funding and contracts and stuff. So it was quite a nightmare. And it was again as if fate was calling its name to me. And I pursued it further and decided to look into what this whole Celebrant stuff was about. And that's how I came across the Fellowship of Professional Celebrants. I had a colleague who had also gone down this journey. And so that was back in 2012, and I've been a very proud celebrant since then and continue to be a member of the Fellowship. And I'm a South London girl. I've moved down here and I'm the happiest I've ever been. But my reputation has been built very much in London and Kent. But I'm now established here, I hope, in East Sussex, and that's where my heart lies. And the role of a celebrant, are any of you aware of what the celebrant actually does? So some of you are, okay. Well, you'll know that my sex life is great, so you know I'm not going to go down that road, and you know that in my own head I think I'm brilliant. But a celebrant is there to help perform and support families and individuals at significant times in their lives, in terms of births, marriages and funerals. And we're just there as a respectful alternative for people. And some of you may be familiar with this phrase. Now, some of you will know that this phrase actually emanated from the church. So back in the day, this would describe typically the functions through the church. So yes, we know that we come into this world. I think most of us, I don't want to stereotype, most of us would like to have a life where we share our life journey with somebody that we love. And so we match. And of course, yeah, regrettably, we end up being dispatched. So this was, I think this dates back to many years ago, the actual phrase. So I help hatch, match and dispatch, simply. So hatching isn't, many of you will know about christenings. So this is about, for naming ceremonies, an alternative, a respectful alternative for people seeking to embrace a new member into their family. That may be the birth of a new child, or it may be a second marriage for families wanting to embrace new children into those relationships. I've done ceremonies for people that are adopting. So it's really about embracing a new member into the family. The ceremonies that I've done, people still want to have what we would call traditionally through the church godparents. Sometimes they're called guide parents. I do wedding ceremonies for couples. I don't, obviously, as I've already said, I'm not a registrar. All the couples that I have helped to support have had their legal part separate. I then perform their wedding ceremony wherever they want it to be. I've been in gardens. I've been on the boat on the Thames. That worried me slightly. On the way home, I thought I didn't check, is the boat moving? I haven't got the stomach for it. But luckily the ceremony was while the boat was static. And I have also Brighton Bandstand, Brighton College, and I'm doing a wedding shortly at the Ocean Suite on Eastbourne Pier, which I'm looking forward to. And then there's another one coming up in a National Trust property in South East London. So the ceremonies are not hugely dissimilar, but I just thought it might be quite helpful just to give some of you who do not know much about, there is a history. And the Celebrant movement really emanated from Australia, and it was back in the 70s. And it came about because there seemed to be the recognition in Australia at the time that there was a decline of church attendances, but also that people were wanting to have something that they were saying better reflected their own choices. Again, this is not about disrespecting or disregarding those that were happy with the role of the church. But back in the 70s, this was quite radical. And so really it was about taking the power away from the state, the church, and giving it to individuals. Well, of course, naturally, as we all know from experiences in life, that things gradually crossed the water, started to grow and develop, and it has done naturally in terms of evolving across the UK. And the Fellowship of Professional Celebrants was one of the first bodies, if not the first body, that was established here in the UK. And the founder, a lady called Terry Shanks, had been trained through the people that had started the movement in Australia. And the figure at the bottom there is based on some stats that was produced by the Church of England some time back. And it was suggested, and it has been suggested to me, that these figures haven't shifted that dramatically. But if we were to look typically, it is suggested that 15% of us go to church, 5% of us are atheists. So what about the 80%? And it's the 80% that I hope aim to support through the role that I perform. So here's the thing. Celebrants, and I can't speak for all of them, but most of us are formally trained, we are certified. And as I said before, this is about meeting the needs of families and individuals through significant times in their lives. And again, I've said about the weddings. And again, people say to you, and I've had it said to me, well, all you do is stand there and talk. What's so hard about that? And I do try and not be offended by that, because I know people don't literally mean that. I hope they don't. Because we are many things. We are about creating stories. We are there to engage and influence and help to encourage. We very often find ourselves having to help orchestrate the whole process for the families, because of course they've got a few other things going on. And so we do have quite a skill set, and obviously we're all individuals, so some of us will perform these things very, very differently. So it is about having compassion, having empathy, having integrity, being honest, being trustworthy, being sensitive. So there's so many aspects. We're more than one thing. One size does not necessarily fit all. Again, some of us may recall, if we look back in time, to the phrase kick the bucket. So I just wanted to use a similar analogy in that, I don't know whether you know that the kick the bucket came from the time when people used to refer to suicides, and it was how people would stand on the bucket, kick it away. So I just wanted to talk about a bucket in terms of helping the bereaved. So I wanted to focus for the next few minutes just on the funeral part of the business. As a celebrant, probably funerals are about 75-80% of my work. And if you were to ask me, out of the three aspects of my work, which is the one that lifts my heart, it's funerals. I have never ever been more honoured. I'm a mum of two, that's up there, that one's there, can't touch that. This is the most honoured and privileged I've ever felt working. So when I look at bereaved, I'm very aware that when I walk into a home that's dealing with grief and a loss, regardless of circumstances, regardless of the who's and the whats, they all have a bucket full of things that they themselves are having to deal with. I can walk in knowing that there's grief and sorrow, sadness, there's tension, there's conflict, there's fear, there's anger, there's concern, there's impatience, there's time issues, there's memories. There's a whole wash, so I'm very aware that when I walk in, buckets will vary from families to families, but they're carrying them, they're there. Some are visible, some are not so. And I have to work very carefully to ensure that I help support families with their buckets. And the other side of that, of course, I hope, is what I bring in terms of my healing bucket. Because obviously I'm walking into, I've had to get over the your name's what, and you're not a celibate. I have to get over that. But then it's about helping families relax and feel that they can talk and be confident that they're in safe hands. And that's what I do. And obviously I have to show that empathy and the sensitivity and all the things that I've touched on, that compassion and understanding, and let people talk how they wish to talk. And I have been I cannot tell you, I can talk for Britain, as some of my friends here will know, I cannot tell you the wonder of some of the stories and the lives that people open up and talk to me about. The death of one person seems to be such a catalyst for so much that is going on in people's lives. It also causes a lot of heartache, as I'm sure many of you will know, but it's the effect that it has on that other family members. And it's an incredible journey, and I do feel, as I say, and I'm going to keep saying it. Now, in terms of the types of funerals, you can imagine if I'm walking in to meet with a family who have lost a loved one through the loved one's own choice. So sadly I do have to, I do funerals for those that have died through suicide. And I've had to do funerals for parents who've lost their young ones, whether they're stillborn, young babies. Their heart breaks. Whether it's a suicide, whether it's a child, whether it's the lady that I did a funeral for recently, she was 104. And I met her when she was 101 because I did her son's funeral, and she asked me at the chapel door to do her funeral. And her life story was just amazing. So whether it's somebody at 104 or a child or someone that's chosen their own path into healing, I'm there to help the bereaved get through that process so that I can help them have the day that they will remember for all the right reasons. I will never be able to have that for my dad. One of the things that struck me when I did the training course back at the beginning at the Fellowship of Professional Celebrants, I thought, well, I'll just go and see how I get on. And a chap on the course was this gorgeous Yorkshireman, big burly fella, worked on radio, had the most sexy, gorgeous voice, but he was a beautiful man inside and out. And we worked in pairs, and we had to write a funeral, and we had to deliver this funeral as if it was obviously a real funeral. And I did Mike's dad, and he asked me to do his dad because his dad had died, there'd been a funeral, but he'd had the same experience that I had with my dad. And he said, would you do my dad as an example for your work? And I went, okay. I watched this grown man cry when I finished doing what I was doing, which may sound a little bit random. I don't like making people cry. And he actually said to me, you've now helped me have a memory that I didn't believe I was ever going to get. And that was the beginning of my beginning. It means everything to me. And sometimes people do, and my friends have said to me, why do you feel so strongly about people at their saddest times? Because we know that we can't do it twice. We know that we can get married more than once. And we know that... but I'm very, very happy, thank you for asking. I want to just... I'm coming to the end now, but I just wanted to share with you, and this is the best imagery I can use, but it's about tapestries, toilets and dogs. I just needed to share this. It's important I do this. I've already touched on, when I meet with loved ones and families, the tapestries of lives that I have had the absolute honour to listen to and be part of has just been incredible. The lady who sat on the Lady Chatterley's Lovers jury back in the 60s, the veterans, the guys that have done so much to protect us and allow us to have the life that many of us take for granted. The stories, I could go on and on, has just been incredible. And they're allowing me to be in their home and sharing this wonderful tapestry of life that they have all gone through. I was in the house 2 weeks ago, and the lady was only in her 50s, sadly. I had 12 people. I said to them, I feel like I'm in bloody court. But we had the most fun. And they said, we didn't expect that it would be okay to laugh. Why? And we were able to give the mum, the aunt, the nan, the best send-off. But the tapestries of lives have just been fantastic. Now, toilets. I go into thousands of homes. I've been doing this for 6 years now. I go in some lovely homes. I go in some interesting homes. My nightmare is that when I first walk in the door, your name's what? You do a what? Yeah, I've got all that. But then I have to say, I need to have a wee. Is that okay? When you've got bladder prolapse, if anyone's ever got... I'm going to get told off for saying that. But if anyone's ever experienced bladder prolapse, it's really hard. So I can't wait. I have to go and have a wee. So I will toodle off to the toilets. And it's amazing what you find out in people's homes in their toilets. I've had musical toilet rolls. I've had Grandad say, while you're in there, love, have a game of golf. There's a loo golf on the side. I've had terrapins sitting next to me. I've had a family ask me to support them again. I'd already done a funeral for them a couple of years ago. Went back into, it was a different house to meet Nan now, because Grandad's died. And so she feels she knows me, so I don't feel so cheeky saying, look, is it okay, I need to have a wee? Yeah, go and have a wee, love, I'll put the kettle on. So I walked through the kitchen, she's going to the kettle, and she said, oh, it's just there, don't worry about the rails, because you know, obviously people have to have high rails sometimes. And I walked into the kitchen, as I've turned, there's no door. And I can just see a net curtain, and I'm like, I've got to go. So she's already at the kettle, singing, humming, and so she's making the tea, and I'm like, well, I've got to go, so I'm pulling a net curtain, and I'm sitting there, and I don't know about you, but I hover. So I'm hovering, and I don't need to explain why, do I? But as I've arrived at the house, I'd seen a young fella on the drive fixing a car. So we've sort of had a little wave, and I think I recognised him from having seen the family before. And so I'm hovering, net curtain, door opens, young fella walks past, he's waving at me. What do? Yeah, hi. And when you've got prolapse, you don't do a quick wee, you're in there for bloody ages. So I've come out the net curtain, and of course I've walked in, and Nan's fine, she's happy, she's making me a cup of tea, and she's made a cake for me. So I've got... So then the grandsons come in, and we've had this little look between each other, and then I've been in another house where we're having this wonderful conversation, and everyone wants to talk, and I can't remember which member of the family had passed away, it's a few years ago, and one of the sons says, I've got to go to the loo, and I think, oh my God, someone's got there before me. And so I'm sitting in the living room, and the toilet's just there, and we're all talking. He was pissing for Britain, and it wouldn't stop. It went on, and we could all hear it. And I'm pretending that I can't hear it. No, of course there's other things going on. I'm thinking, no, I definitely can't hear that. And I said, and I'm trying to distract everybody, but they're all saying, oh, don't worry, that's just Joe. He always does that. So Joe comes back in the room, and I just have to carry on. And my last toilet share, I'm in a house, and Mum's died, and the two sisters were delightful, and we've had a lovely, lovely chat, and I'm at I need to go and have a wee. And the husband's not come out, he doesn't want to be engaged in the process, but I know he's sitting in the living room. So I've come out, the toilet's just there, so dog's walking around, and so I've gone into the toilet, but I can't, there's no lock. Now, as I've walked in, the husband's there, he's opposite the toilet door, watching telly, but he's got his side to me. So I think, well, shut the door. They know I'm in there, they're not going to come in. So I'm hovering, and as I'm weeing, the door opens, in comes the dog. And I'm looking, and of course the husband's he's there, and I'm thinking, please don't turn around. So I'm full hover, peeing, dog's there looking at me as if to say, what are you doing, what's going on? And I've had to try and nudge the dog, but I can't quite reach him. So I'm trying to finish. I don't know why I'm telling you my toilet story, but what fascinates me is people just are gorgeous, and people's lives and their homes, and of course everyone says to me, you all right with dogs? Yeah, no, I'm fine with dogs. Bloody Great Danes who want to come and say hello in certain areas of your body, and the man that said to me, oh, my wife used to breed chihuahuas. Are you okay with dogs? Yeah, that's fine. 9 chihuahuas. And he wouldn't take them out of the room, so I'm surrounded by these chihuahuas. And he let it go for about 10 minutes, and in the end I said to him, can we have a little break? Is that okay? Because I can't actually move my arm. And I know how important dogs are. They're my 2 dogs that I used to have. And dogs, I know, form a very, very special part in family lives. So the moral of this presentation is just to share with you that Celebrant work and what we can do to support loved ones, families, individuals, whether we are talking about naming ceremonies or saying goodbye to loved ones or joining together and making a new life together. Please, please don't ignore the possibility, because it's all about you. And it would mean ever such a lot to people like me to support families at the significant times in their lives. So I hope this has been of interest. And I chose the sunflower as my branding when I first started because that was my mum's favourite flower. And the other thing that has fascinated me when I sit with families and their tapestries of lives is how confident people feel when they talk to me about afterlife. Because one of the questions that I always ask families is, well, because when I do the committals, and most of you have been to funerals, you'll know when we say our final goodbye and we wish the loved one on their journey to their final resting place, I always make sure that I reflect the beliefs and expectations of the loved ones. So I had that conversation, if the families want to have it. And again, families have shared with me some wonderful stories about what they believe happens when we all get dispatched. And it's just been it's been enlightening for me. I have personally felt presence in the chapels, not all the time. I've had certain services that I've performed where I have felt they're with me. I have had people tell me that they've seen their loved one with me. I've been in homes where I've had people say, it's too busy in here and there's only 2 of us in the room. It's been an eye-opener and a journey that I continue to relish, and I'm so proud to do. And if anybody wanted to ever find out more about any aspect of Celebrant work, I'm here in East Sussex. I would love to support you, and I'd love to support people that are looking for this level of support. I do have leaflets with me. I'm not ambulance chasing, I promise. I've got wedding leaflets, my business card and my funeral leaflet. I have a Facebook page and I have a website. But thank you for allowing me to share my passion with you.
What a wonderful, wonderful talk. I knew nothing about the Celebrants. Now I do, and I know also an awful lot about toilets as well.
It's got to be done.
It was brilliant. I loved it. I loved the talk. I love that information and the passion within the talk. Was brilliant. So, does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Nuala, I know you didn't expect me to say anything, but Nuala actually helped our family very recently. My father died in February, and Nuala was already a friend, a good friend. And I asked my dad, because we knew he was going to die, and we were all very open about it. And I said to my dad, look, do you want some random vicar to do your service for you? Because he wasn't religious. He said, well, not really. I said, well, can I introduce you to my friend Nuala? So you met him on 3 occasions, didn't you? Mm-hmm. You really connected with him. And it was wonderful to see how Nuala worked. Literally, I was watching her work. And the service was incredible. You did such an amazing job. And I can't thank you enough. And I would say to any of you, if you know anybody that is, nearing the time when they need to start thinking about this kind of thing, just contact Nuala and she'll look after you.
I promise I didn't prime that. Now, can I just say very quickly that Steve's dad was one of those moments when I walked into the hospital to meet him for the first time in Hastings. We were talking about Red Indian spirit guides and him being reunited with his wife Betty, and then his life story was it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, here, sorry.
I was going to say, my father and my stepfather, we used Celebrants for them in 2009, and at the time people said, oh, you're going the humanist route then?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, and I just wondered what that actual point of difference is.
Well, that's a good question, and apologies for not labelling that, but I always refer to a spectrum. So I say to families, well, here's your spectrum. On this end of the spectrum, you've got the church, the robe, the collar, the faith. I mean, I was christened a Catholic, but my parents didn't force it. I wasn't confirmed. But this is for people that want the church. Right at the other end of the spectrum is your atheist humanist. So there's nothing. So here's our faith, there's nothing. And as I like to say, I straddle. Because well, we're talking virgins and celibacy. I might as well go the whole hole. So it's
I thought you were hovering earlier,
but no, the celebrants. I mean, I do semi-religious or non-religious. So if families say they want a humanist-based service, then it's a humanist-based service. But people still don't fully understand the difference between a humanist and a celebrant. A humanist, if they're true to their position, they will not have hymn books, crosses in the chapel, they will not have the Lord's Prayer, hymns, etc. There'll be no religious content whatsoever because there's absolutely nothing. But most people, and I'm stereotyping, want to have an element of what they believe is traditional, but they don't want the church. Again, I'm not being disrespectful to churchgoers here in the room. So I will have families say, oh, they weren't religious, but can we have the Lord's Prayer? Or they're not religious, but can we have a hymn? Now, when people ask for a hymn, I do go into a panic, simply because I can't sing. And I have to confess to that, because they always expect you to be able to sing. So no, the Celebrant is very different to the Humanist, but I can deliver humanist-based services. But my personal view is, I know there's something greater after this life than there is a reason why I'm here. There's a reason I believe that we're all here. And I've had too many experiences that tell me there is more.
There's another question. Yeah. Thank you.
Other than the ability to connect with people, which you've clearly shown tonight, for somebody that's interested in becoming a celebrant, what's the training process that you go through?
I mean, the only body that I would recommend, not because I've trained with them, I mean, the only thing that I would a word of caution is, this is going to sound awful, you can imagine, I mean, I've run other businesses in previous lives, but you can't, it's very hard to run and plot a business plan around being a funeral celebrant, for example. So anyone going into the idea of becoming a celebrant, all power to you, but there's an awful lot of us now. In fact, the market has got somewhat saturated. But there are a number of companies that do train. I would strongly recommend only ever the Fellowship of Professional Celebrants. There's a few that have set themselves up who I know have never done funerals, and they're supposedly training other people. I've been asked if I would train other celebrants, but I would always recommend people go through the fellowship as a training model. So the training's broken down. Most funeral celebrancy courses are 3 days to a week, and it's usually away. I mean, there are a few run across the country. It's usually Salisbury, Worthing or Hebden Bridge for the fellowship. And you can do the wedding and family celebrancy course, which obviously I also did. So the training, it just gives you the bones. The rest of it's got to come from here.
Excellent. Yes. Question.
What sorts of things do you actually say at the naming or the hatching and the matching and dispatching? So what exactly does it consist of? What sort of thing?
Magic.
Thank you.
It's my magic. No. The funeral services will have opening words, and my language is respectful language about why we're all joined together. And so there'll be the format will be there's a formal opening. Obviously, I'm welcoming everybody into the service. If I look at funerals, I will then do, if I've been asked to do the tribute, I don't like eulogy, even though I've been called a eulogist. I will do the eulogy or the tribute on behalf of the family, but I write it, having spent time with the family. Or the family may say, well, actually, we'd like to write our tribute. Will you read it? But there's usually a component which is about why we're all joined together. We're here to help, not just say goodbye. We're not just here to remember, but we're here to celebrate that this person was here. And that, for me, is where the joy comes. People say to me, we never knew that about him or her. So the format is opening words, the tribute, depending on how that looks. I've got 2 funerals tomorrow. I know that both funerals, I'm doing the tributes to both of them, which I have written based on my meetings with the family. And then I will talk it through with the family before the day, and then obviously I deliver it on the day. And I know tomorrow we've got a couple of grandchildren, and I've got a daughter speaking at the second one. So we only have 30 minutes in chapel, traditionally and typically, and that's the only thing that I have to be always mindful of, and have to remind families. And that's the bit I hate. I hate having to tell people, we've only got 30 minutes to do justice to this wonderful person's life. How do I sum up someone's life who was 104 in 30 minutes? So you have the tribute, a moment for people to reflect, or for those who do wish to have a quiet prayer. Then we have the closing words. So my language will be all around that. It's very hard to say what I say because it will vary from service to service, but that would be a typical process. And then music's such an important part of all the services. But we know all this. We know that music can be a real key.
Final question, and then
Not really a question, just to say that that time element, I was talking to my mum, who's quite elderly, last year or so ago, about what she wanted to do for her funeral, and she said that she was worried that people would say wonderful things about her and she'd miss them. And she said, isn't it a shame that people say such wonderful things at your funeral but you're not there? She said, I'm quite like a pre-funeral funeral.
Yeah, no, I've been asked to
So
do those.
last year that's what we did.
Yeah.
And we called it, I think the Celebrant called it This Is Your Life. And we
Yeah.
called it and my niece called it Granny's Awake, which was...
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and the other side
And we
to
took as
that.
long as we wanted.
No, but that was brilliant. I mean, you can book a double slot, and some of the private crematoriums. I mean, I go to a private one quite a lot, and they instead of half an hour, I think they sort of block out an hour. But how do you? Even if you had 3 hours, 4 hours. But the other side of that, I've actually been asked not to do a funeral service for a daughter who died in her 40s, but they wanted it to be a birthday party, and I didn't realise how much of the birthday element that she wanted until she's at the chapel door and she said to me, by the way, Nuala, can you get them all to sing happy birthday? Oh, okay, so I had to go into the chapel room and say, look, what happy birthday version have we got on the digital system? And it was wonderful. I had 200 people singing happy birthday and clapping. And they weren't going on to a wake, they were going on to a birthday celebration. And that's why I love doing what I do, because it's helping people have it how they want to have it. But I think what you've just highlighted, there's more and more people wanting that opportunity.
Fabulous. Well, can we thank Nuala for